Welcome to Frederick Douglass and the Slave Narrative Influence on America by Kevin Pham and Elisa Simpson. Douglass was born somewhere around 1821. He was a former slave turned writer and activist of the abolitionist movement. He was a leader of a group of people whose goal was to end slavery. He strongly advocated the termination of slavery throughout the Civil War. In the year of 1845, Douglass published his first autobiography, Narrative of the Life of Frederick Douglass. In it, he tells us of his life during his time under slavery. Douglass's views of equal rights. As an abolitionist and former slave, Douglass wanted other slaves to acquire literacy. In his autobiography, he states how literacy was important for social communication between blacks and whites. He viewed slavery as being immoral. He wanted blacks to be treated as human beings with the same equal rights as stated in the Declaration of Independence, that all men are created equal and are given rights by their Creator. How did Douglass' ideas and others change America's identity? Douglass was one of many within the abolitionist movement to advocate the ending of slavery and equal rights for blacks. Douglass and other former slave writers' tales of slavery caused a rift in the United States. Their narratives stirred debatable discussion and ideas of what was really slavery. In the end, slavery was abolished, and the road to equality soon opened up for blacks. During this era, slavery was viewed as acceptable culture in the United States. But after the movement, this changed and blacks were eventually seen as individuals with equal rights. Douglass published 3 autobiographies. In 1845, Narrative of the Life of Frederick Douglass. 10 years later, My Bondage and My Freedom. And in 1881, The Life and Times of Frederick Douglass. The narratives contain both anti-slavery sentiment and personal revelation. They were considered the finest examples of both slave narrative tradition and classics of American autobiography. Slave narratives are the personal experiences of slaves during the antebellum era. They included the personal experiences of African Americans who were successful in escaping from slavery. The importance of slave narratives in the United States. They were autobiographical narratives of former slaves, comprised one of the most extensive and influential traditions in African American literature and culture. And until the Depression era, slave narratives outnumbered novels written by African Americans. They directly influenced classic works in American literature, such as Uncle Tom's Cabin, The Adventures of Huckleberry Finn, and Beloved. Life as a slave. Douglas's narrative appeals to the human emotion. In his descriptive account of slave experience, it includes vivid descriptions of physical and emotional abuse. It also captures scenes of life on the plantation and makes reference to the destruction of family ties. Douglas's education awareness. Slaves were prevented from obtaining an education. The awareness of education gave a slave freedoms limited by society. Douglas's education forced him to become more aware of the limitations placed on him by slavery. His frustration with the slave system intensified with his education. Douglas's educational knowledge contributed to his desire to escape slavery. His awareness of the freedoms that were taken away from him contributed to his desire to escape. After his escape, Douglas worked to abolish slavery. He went on to publish an abolitionist paper called the North Star. He spoke publicly about the flaws of slavery. He worked for the Underground Railroad and he recruited soldiers for Civil War to fight for equal treatment of blacks.